بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف وجعلنا من أعوان وأنصاره اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. We now start with mentioning some of the commonalities between Islam and Christianity. First of all, we Muslims and Christians both believe in and worship the same God. Okay, we believe in the same God and worship the same God. For me, this is what is fundamental. We worship the same God who is one. Unfortunately, there are some Muslims who think that Christians do not believe in one God, but in many gods. They don't understand Trinity in the way that Christians understand it. Is not polytheism. Trinity is not polytheism. Christians are the first to say that they are monotheists. So we both believe in one God who is merciful, benevolent, omnipotent, omnipresent, and we can engage in endless discussion and sharing about each of these attributes. Today, unfortunately, there are many people who don't believe in God, who do not associate themselves with any faith. So when someone says that they believe in God, we should be extremely happy. Imagine if after lots of discussions you convince someone that God exists. You are very happy. Christians, they believe in God, they worship God. So we should be very happy. Unfortunately, all too often, our first and instinctive response is, okay, you believe in God, but we have differences. So we don't give prominence to faith in God. We give prominence to differences. You remember what I said last week about how our mind, works first with differences, but we need to train ourselves to prioritize commonalities. Muslims and Christians love God immensely. Try to devote themselves to Him, to God, and gain proximity to Him. We read in Psalms 42, Psalms, my soul thirsts for God, for the living God. Actually most of the liturgy of Christians is based on the Psalms. Yeah? When you go to the church, especially in monasteries, you see most of their prayer is from the Psalm, which is very monotheistic, very clearly monotheistic. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and behold the face of God? And in the Quran we read, to God belongs the east and the west. Wheresoever you turn, there is the face of God. I think Sheikh Hamidin worked on Psalms, yeah? And Saif Sajjad for dissertation. So there are lots of similarities. And Saif Sajjadi is translated by William Chittick as Psalms of Islam. This concept of seeking the face of God is present in Islam and Christianity and Judaism. Yeah? Ibtigha wajhillah. The problem is that we are not always able to find the face of God in places that are not familiar to us. Yeah? Even inside your own tradition. For example, you are very comfortable in the mosque near your home. But if you go to another mosque, you have difficulty in connecting with God. You know, sometimes you are used to this mosque. Yeah? But if you go to, for example, a mosque of another denomination, you have difficulty. Some people, for example, if you go to church, they have difficulty. You know, in one of our trips, we had a person with us, a non-Iranian, and when we went to the church, she was very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And it's because of, you know, I think mindset, mentality, prejudice. But when I go to the church, I am very comfortable. Because I say this is where God is remembered. And this is what Quran says. Yeah? لولا دفع الله الناس بعضهم ببعض لهدمت صوامع وبيع وصلوات ومساجد يذكر فيها اسم الله كثيرا. So why you cannot be comfortable when there is a place that Allah is mentioned there? There is also something that maybe you can find a reference for it. It's very famous that someone said to Amirul Mu'mineen when they were passing by a church, you know, that for example, I don't know, they believe in, you know, Trinity, whatever. And Imam Ali said, you know, they believe in God, how much they have prayed for God, something like this. And there is another one that Imam Ali interpreted the ring of the bell. You know, there are two, if you can find this hadith. So Imam Ali was not, you know, taken away from presence of God in the church by looking at the differences. So sometimes we feel more comfortable somewhere and less comfortable somewhere else, but it's more emotional. Yeah. For example, if you go to the shrine and it's quiet, you enjoy more. If it is, you know, crowded, you don't enjoy more. But this may not be a good thing. When you go and, you know, there is more people, you should be happier, even if you cannot enjoy, you know, your peaceful ziyarah. Yeah? Does this have power? This one? There is one, but I don't know it has power or. Uh-huh. No. So you should not go by your emotions, which many times are not educated emotions. It's just, you know, kind of uneducated feelings. Yeah. You should be able to find the face of God everywhere, especially where God is remembered. Inshallah, later we will talk about the concept of sacredness based on my lecture in University of Nairobi this year. I talked about sacred. What is the meaning of sacred and what makes something sacred? So this concept of seeking the face of God is amazing. It can summarize our entire life. What are you seeking? You are seeking the face of God. The problem is that we are not always able to find the face of God in places that are not familiar to us. For example, if you have always gone to one particular church or mosque, then you go to another one where the architecture is different, for example, you will have trouble finding the face of God there. Some Muslims can find God anywhere, can say their prayers anywhere. But there are also some, not the majority, but there are some who have difficulty in finding God in a church. They can find God in a mosque or even on the street, but not in a church. The same would hold true for a Christian who cannot find God in a mosque. Okay? Those who are spiritual and enlightened, both spiritual and enlightened, can find the face of God everywhere. And they can certainly find God more easily in a place of worship, even if it is not their own. For example, if you go to Europe and you have option of saying your prayer on the street or take permission and say your prayer in the church, which one is better?
In the church.
In the church? But some people say, no, it's better to say on the street.
Maybe this is najis.
I already found the narration you mentioned
Oh, good.
before some minutes. حضرت ابن عبدالله همدانی از یاران خواستن المؤمنین نقل میکنه که در سفری که به همراه آن حضرت به هیرت داشتیم به کلیسایی رسیدیم که در آن دیرانی متولی کلیسا مشغول ناقوس زدن بود که اونجا تفسیر میکنه که آیا میدان این ناقوس چی میگوید؟ اینو میگه که خدا و رسول پسرمون او داناترم. حالا در ادامه
This is the second one. There are two.
حضرت
Yes.
فرمودن
I sent
ناقوس
it to
دنیا
you.
و مسیحیت
This one?
Yes.
Okay, very that with the reference. Even one person went to Lebanon and found that a special because they have different type of ringing the bell of the church, and found that one. Very good. Please put it in the group. Also, please find the other one.
And Arabic.
Yeah. The other one, which Amir al-Mu'minin says, how much God is worshipped here. It's another one. Very good. Thank you. You are a good man. So, those who are spiritual, enlightened, can find the face of God everywhere, and they can certainly find God more easily in a place of worship, even if it is not their own. Let us be honest. How is it possible that I, as a Muslim or Christian, many times I try to speak not as a Muslim. I try to speak as a person who can be Muslim or Christian. I want to be fair. So I say mosque, church, Muslim, Christian, because I think you need to be fair and objective. How is it possible that I, as a Muslim or Christian, can go to the place of worship of another tradition and not see any beauty in the worship that believers have offered in that place over years or even centuries? Aren't you amazed if you go to a mosque of Sunnis or to a church of Christians where for hundreds of years they have worshipped? You must be happy that there are people who have dedicated themselves to God and worshipped here. If I cannot smell the fragrance of the worship and glorification of God in the church or mosque of believers who belong to a tradition different from my own, what is wrong with me? Okay? Why am I so biased? Why can't I find the face of God who has been worshipped there? I'm not saying that all places of worship are equal. Okay? I'm not saying equal, but I'm saying there is beauty everywhere. Not equal, but there is beauty. You can love your church or mosque more than any other, but still you should be able to find the face of God in other places of worship. Don't restrict God. Some people, unfortunately, make God very small. They think God cannot be with other people. unfortunately, we who are small also make God small. We think that our God cannot be present everywhere. Why? Because I am not there. Unconsciously, they think we hold the whole truth, and where we are, God is there. When we are not there, God is not there. This can be for Christians or Muslims or Jews, it's a common problem. This kind of God is the God of an individual or a tribe or a sect. The real God is universal. I have a discussion, inshallah maybe future can expand, but let me say it now also. Once we took a group of brothers to Italy from Imam Khomeini Institute, some PhD students, and we went to Castel Gandolfo, which is the conference center for Focolare in Rome, outside Rome. And we were talking about love, and this concept came to my mind, which helped me a lot. I said there are two types of love for God. One is possessive. You love God in the sense that you want to possess God. This is similar to loving your car, your house, your computer. It's mine. Yeah? No one can have, benefit from this or access to it without my permission. It's mine. I may give you permission, but it's not yours. Unfortunately, many people love God in this way. God is mine or ours. Yeah? You don't have it. The other type of love is that you are possessed by the beloved. So instead of you try to control God, you are possessed by God. The first one is very destructive. Why? Because you make God, who is universal, God of a sect. What is the problem if God is God of a sect or a tribe or a nation? What's the problem? Then this God has no interest in other tribes or sects, or less interest. Yeah? This God is not universal. When God becomes tribal, then this God can tell you, go and kill other tribes. So you are projecting your ego into God and make God speak of your selfish interests. And then you give yourself permission to do all the mischief in the name of God. For the glory of God, let us conquer other nations. For the glory of God. But this is not glory of God. This is glory of yourself. You first conquered God. Yeah. Limited God, owned God, and then you use God to give you your legitimacy. This is very common problem. Muslims have this problem. Some Muslims, some Christians, some Jews, some Hindus, all have this problem. Not all of them, but you find all traditions suffer from this problem. And it's very dangerous. But the true love for God is that when a person or a tribe or a nation truly love God, then they rise towards God instead of bringing God down. So you belong to a tribe, but you don't have tribal mindset. You don't have sectarian mindset. You can look at people in the eyes of God. There's a beautiful hadith, I think it's part of Hadith al-Mi'raj, that Allah says, something like this, you can easily search, and أولئك الذين نظروا إلى الخالق مثلي, something like this. These are the people who look at my people from my perspective. Okay? When you look at people from God's perspective, then you love them. I'm not saying equally, but you love them. God of all tribes, God of all nations. Yeah? So, either we rise towards God or we lower God to our level. The only, thing that can save us is if we rise towards God, not bring God down. So you have to be able to hold your faith in a very strong way, but without developing bias against others.
أولئك الذين نذروا إلى المخلوقين بنذر إليهم ولم يرفعوا الحوائج إلى الخلق بطونهم خفيفة من أكل الحلال نعيم.
حديث المعراج. Yeah. أولئك الذين نظروا إلى الخالق إلى المخلوقين بالنظر إليهم. It's very beautiful. I have discussed this in Wings of Unity also. So there are people who look at creatures of Allah in the way that God looks at them. But you have to train yourself. It's not easy. It needs lots of training.
Maybe I was in a conference talking about this issue. I just crossed a hadith by Imam Qadhan.
Please put it in the group with reference. Yes.
A hadith by Imam Qadhan that in which he says you are not allowed to hate sinners. You have to hate sins that they have done.
Yes.
This is really God's perspective.
So, the real God is universal. Okay? Real God is universal. And you have to be universal. There is a very rich and significantly similar spirituality in both religions. In Christianity, there is rich spirituality. We should not think spirituality is only for us. Spirituality is also for other communities. I'm not saying again that it's the same, but there is a spirituality there. And it depends on individuals. Maybe a Christian is more spiritual than a Muslim. Possible. I know there are many Christians who are better than me. When we enter the field of mysticism and spirituality, we find even more similarities. Mystics are better at acknowledging the love for God that we share. You see, mysticism, people who are more spiritual, they are better for interfaith. I don't know who are the worst for interfaith. Maybe afterwards I say. Second, we both believe in human free will. It's a very fundamental issue. We believe in free will. And our responsibility and accountability before God. We also share an understanding of basic moral values and virtues. My PhD is on ethical relativism, so I have worked on this, and also on ethics. All the virtues are the same. Maybe we give more priority to one virtue, but is there any virtue in Islam that in Christianity is not a virtue? Or in Christianity a virtue, in Islam is not a virtue? At the level of virtues, ethics, we are very close. Spirituality, very close. Can you identify one virtue about which we disagree? For example, can you identify something that Christian would call a virtue and Muslim would call a vice? To what degree we exhibit those values in our lives is a question.